Cool. Okay, well, people, tonight, I'll start that again. Hi, everyone. Well, tonight, I'm back with Tala and talking about interconnectedness of food. And look, the last couple of conversations that Tala and I have had, there has been a couple of quick hints and tips to change, what can you do today to change your eating habits and the nutritional value of your food. But really what I'd like to speak to you tonight, Tala, is about how that food gets to our table and whether there's things that, because food, this series is about the interconnectedness of food, and that there's a whole range of things that we can run off down rabbit holes. But really, for our viewers, this is about exploring and starting to understand and doing their own research and journey and all of that sort of stuff as well. But so the topic I'd like to really explore tonight is, how the food gets to our table, how it's, not in detail how it's grown, but the different, what's useful about how it's grown and then how it gets to our table and that sort of stuff, and whether is anything that the viewers should be really key topics or key points that they should know about. So over to you. Distribution of food or
no, it's a really terrific topic, Kathy. I really think it's it's definitely of strong interest to me, and it is very interesting when you start to sort of think about where our food comes from, because it's such a fundamental part of our lives. We all eat, we all need to eat, and so our choices, I guess, about what food we eat is probably our biggest impact on the environment and our health and all of these things. So it's something a lot of people maybe don't give enough thought to, perhaps, or haven't given a lot of sort of a lot of attention to. But
look, it's easy not to. I mean, I grew up, my mum grew things growing up, so I was quite aware of it, but and hated it too, by the way. So as soon as I left home, I went and bought a whole heap of junk food. But I do, and then as soon as I got over that in about a month. Because the food does taste nicer when it's home. So I did interrupt you. So
no, you touched on a really, I guess, a really great place to start is, I guess, the benefit of, if you can, of growing your own food. There's lots of reasons why this is really beneficial, sort of not just from in fact, you can eat it a lot fresher generally than the food you can buy in a supermarket or buy in a store. It hasn't had to travel long distances, hasn't needed to be sprayed or given anything to sort of, slow its degradation, things like this. And particularly if you build up your own soils, being really nice, healthy soils, put on nice compost, make sure that there's a lot of microbial activity, lots of worms, things like this, that will really give you the best, I guess, really good nutritious boost, as well as having that delicious, tasty, fresh food that we've just spoken about.
Yeah. All I was going to say is, you mentioned earlier about how the food is how it's grown and nurtured, and it has an environmental impact, and you just flagged a couple of things there, and I just thought I'd point out to viewers that we don't think we think of deforestation so they can have cows growing there so we can eat eat meat, or grow corn or something for our bread and wheat and all of that sort of stuff. But you mentioned like herbicides, pesticides, preservatives, like that's all adding an environmental footprint too, like the factories that are pumping out those things and digging up soil from places in Africa or something like that to get to put into to create these pesticides. Like, that's also of an environmental impact. So I had that, and I just wanted to say something about that. You go, actually it's not just the clearing of the land that's causing the environmental impact either. Another rabbit hole for another time.
Right. But that's sort of, I guess, leads into really, I guess, great consideration, I guess, of the differences between food that's produced on an industrial scale and the food that's produced on a more local scale and for more local consumption. And generally, I guess, large-scale industrial food production is aimed at maximising a yield and minimising costs and things like this. And I guess over the years, there's has been a strong emphasis on, I guess, use of pesticides and things to control, for example, weeds, use of a lot of fertilizers and things, because basically the soil gets, the health of the soil is generally not good if you've got been treating it with different herbicides and pesticides. And then we're adding the fertilizer. It makes the plants grow, but it's not actually increasing their nutritional value or giving them the same nutritional value as food grown in healthy soil. Basically, generally, industrial food is grown in soils that are more or less barren, and you have to add the fertilizers and things, or nothing would grow. But there isn't the microbial activity and things that actually supports the most nutritious product. And in addition to that, often it's genetically modified seeds and crops and things that get grown in these monocultures, which has its own issues in terms of lack of biodiversity and a lack of natural, for example, controls, insects and things that can naturally control pests if they're in the right balance.
I've got a lot of pests in my garden, I must admit, but when you said the genetically modified seeds and that sort of stuff, I adore tomatoes, and for a while there I had a lot of, sorry, my cat's just turned up again, not a lot of money, so I bought the cheapest tomatoes I could, and it sort of gave my brain the fix of it, but it really didn't taste like tomatoes. So now that I have a little bit more cash, I'm buying the trust tomatoes or the organic ones, and where I can, I grow them, but I'm only pretty successful at cherry tomatoes, actually, I must confess. But just that difference in, and you'd say, well, it's grown, so why doesn't this tomato taste as yummy as this tomato? And it's like you said, it's coming down to added fertilizers that the soil isn't naturally holding, and then it's just I guess making the tomato grow, but it's not actually giving you the taste of a tomato or anything like that.
Well, I think also that the breeds of a lot of commercial fruits and vegetables, we're selecting breeds that will transport well, that will look good in the store, not necessarily to taste the best.
So what's your opinion on the nutritional value of those ones? Is that lowering itself as well, again, that breed?
I guess,
so your opinion,
you probably just look at individual fruits. I can't say, I can't say for sure about everything, but I guess all I can say is that, again, generally things that are mass produced, people are generally trying to do them in the most efficient way possible. And unfortunately, when food gets transported long distances and sits in supermarkets and things like that, they don't want it to spoil. You want it to, it's obviously better for manufacturers and distributors and supermarkets if it can last longer. And I just know for myself as well that I think it feels like a lot of fruit gets picked green, so it can be transported. And I've been terribly disappointed by the peaches and nectarines and things this season in the stores, because I feel like they've got no flavour. And I feel like they have picked them before they've naturally ripened and naturally developed the sugars that we love and
and then they just go and give us sugars and all the other artificial stuff they give us anyway.
I think it's
Look, I thought on that. I watched a program a while ago about how even more worse, the fresh food people is a lot of the stuff is picked and is in their mass storehouses for a year, and even lettuces and things like that, and they use gases and coldness or something to just slow it right down, almost put it in stasis. Do you know much about that sort of aspect of preserving fresh food so it looks they can put it onto the shelves? Or
not a lot. It is something I would like to know more about. I do believe I don't remember the name of the product that they do spray, I think, on lettuces and spinach and things like that. And that's, I believe, I haven't confirmed this, I believe it's why they have wash before use. Because I used to always think, this is clean, why would I need to wash it before I eat it? And I think it may be to do with what they do, perhaps spray on it too. That's a suspicion. I haven't confirmed that, but that's because otherwise to me it's like there's no visible dirt, sort of like, is it just from handling or what's the, but I do think they do spray. No, I can't remember the name of the product now, but
it's not I mean, look, this is a conversation, so it's just, a lot more about it than me, so I was just interested in your thoughts on that. It was years ago I saw that. To a degree I see food and that going off in Woolworths now, so maybe they're not either spraying it as much, or they have been called out a few times, and now they're getting, you know, close to farm to that.
I don't know, I guess, what their, you know, what their purchasing policies are, you know, in a lot of ways in terms of. I have always wondered.
This isn't a slag off of one particular brand. It's just you know, I happen to shop at that particular brand most of the time. And obviously there's enough nutrition in there to keep me alive, because it's kept me alive for the last 20 years. So there you go. But I guess it's the quality of the nutrition and whether or not my body's actually building up all of the sprays over time to you know, get to this point. You talked about different farming techniques. And you know, commercial farming is there other different sort of farming techniques that would impact the quality and the nutrition of the food? Because you know, you've talked about commercial farming, so what other techniques are better or worse?
Well, I mean, I guess to the extent I try to buy organic produce, and you know, there's different certifications I think available around the world, and you know, some people, you know, really seem to believe in certifications. Some people feel that there's still room for improvement in terms of these things, and some people feel it's a lot of money they pay to be certified when they question the value of that when they are producing things with natural techniques. And generally, it means that they're not using artificial pesticides and herbicides, and you know, using sort of natural growing techniques, so that you don't need to use, you know, the fertilizers and all the sort of, I guess, the manufactured components like that. I mean, there's other systems, I think, that there's different descriptions, like biodynamic systems, syntropic farming, where it seems to go beyond, I guess my impression is it goes a bit beyond organic in terms of truly wanting to be a system where it's not just using organic inputs. So, for example, you know, you might be feeding your chickens organic grain, but it might be, well, I'm growing the grain and the grasses that the chickens are out feeding on during the day. And that, to me, that would be probably a bit more of a biodynamic system, where you're looking to, you know, I guess, minimize the inputs to the system because it's become self-sustaining, or it's sort of a, you know, you're building up the soil, and you know, the chickens' manure is helping the soil, and you're growing the feed for the chickens, and it's sort of a more of a cyclical process.
Yeah, actually, speaking of chicken poo, I've got hydroponics, which is again another topic, but a friend of mine that I used to work with had sorry, I got aquaponics, not hydroponics. And he did hydroponics, but he had chickens, and he used the chicken poo and did something to, like, put water in it or something like that with half a cup of vinegar or something. I don't know what it was. And then that actually was so instead of buying the hydroponics fertilizers and things like that, and his things just came out massive, you know, they were huge things. So it's I can really see a biodynamic system working really well for and you know, getting, you know, so that you can, you know, the chickens would be laying eggs and that sort of stuff, but they're and you know, certainly in suburbia, you know, that's a great way to use the chicken poo and produce your vegetables. And then, of course, with hydroponics, you can come up high and the chickens don't eat your food.
I mean, I guess that's it's sort of another step for most people, and just to start with even composting your own you know, organic waste in the kitchen, using that in your garden, or having your worm farm, are ways you can do that on a really sort of small scale, but still get, I guess, the benefit of that, adding that nutrition to your soil, which then comes out of comes to you in the form of the food that you're consuming, that you've grown there. So
look, I know worm farms and that are supposed to be good, but I haven't, and composting is supposed to be good. I've got 2 books on composting. You think that, you know, how hard is it? But I'm not the best at compost. No, you keep coughing away.
I'll just need a drink of water. I'll just be a second.
Well, yeah, look, what I wanted to say is, look, I'm not the world's best composter. I've got 2 books on it and I don't do it very well. But having said that, I was out there on the weekend and I seem to be getting a lot of potatoes lately that are just sprouting and going to seed really quickly. And I've filled in the beds that I have made, but I haven't made the other beds up yet. So I've got all of these like seed things going to seed. So I've just gone, oh fuck it, I'll just bury them in the ground. And you know, and if they don't grow, well, it's compost.
No, that's right.
So although I do have a bush turkey at the moment, and unfortunately he really likes sweet potatoes, but he likes all the ones that I'm growing. The pile of soil that I'm got to get, you know, clean up, that's now got 2 ton of grass in it because of the weather, and 50 ton of sweet potatoes in it. Does he want to dig those up? No, because he has to go in and all of the grass, you know. Let's dig up the stuff that Kathy's actually growing successfully.
Yeah, it's funny how they know.
my bush turkey, not heaven, but my bush turkey trials and tribulations. Yeah, so the years who aren't in Australia, go look up bush turkeys. Christmas, I think your Thanksgiving turkey came from these things, but they're not very fat. They're very scrawny, and I would say stringy, but I haven't actually eaten one. But although he would be organic, so.
That is true. Although I have to say that the one that lives near us eats cat food, so it's probably not.
He should be getting nice. He should be getting nice and fat there on that cat food. So.
Oh gosh.
Okay, well, we did a really great segue there onto bush turkeys. So Leon maybe we'll do a whole section on them one time, but quite frankly, they should not be in my garden. Although they're very good at digging up things, and they do create really great mulch piles. So I do give kudos to where that he is a better mulcher than I am.
Well, it's actually a really interesting point. It's in terms of you know, some of the more natural farming systems, you are looking for the synergies between different elements of your system, and going, well, yes, if we've got chickens that are really great for scratching up the ground, and we can use those to prepare an area and actually eat all the grass and, you know, and poop all over it, and then that might be your next growing bed. So it's about recognizing the value of some of these things.
I've heard of that. I've actually some friends ages ago, they actually coined a phrase for it, chicken ploughing.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, they say, oh, the chickens are in there at the moment because they're doing chicken ploughing. I go, what? And it's like, yeah, they're chicken ploughing. And then I went, oh my God, yes, you're right, because they have all of their beds. They had all of their beds not roped off, you know, fenced off from the chickens. And when they wanted to clean a bed out, they'd let all the chickens into that area, and they'd just dig the crap out of it and crap on it, obviously. So yeah, no, that's sort of, is that more permaculture though? That's sort of, or is that biodynamics?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, it can be part of a permaculture system. You know, permaculture or biodynamic system, or, you know, I think.
I was just wondering what the difference is, because I don't, but I guess growing is growing at the end of the day. So
I was going to say, there are differences, I guess, in the definitions of some of these systems, but I think there's also common elements to me, and so I think. Look,
the other thing, like, it's really good talking about the different systems that people should be aware of, and perhaps look into for themselves to go what suits them, but also to like. I grew up with my mum. We had nearly 2 acres. Mum basically made all of it into crops, and there was, I guess, 6 kids at one point, but probably only really 4 at home at any given point in time growing up. And that couldn't sustain us. And even in these times here, you know, I know people who have set up better garden systems than my mum had set up. And, you know, that struggles to, there's someone at Debra that they had aquaponics. They had 50 acres. They had cows, they had sheep, they had chickens, they had aquaponics, they had weekend beds, they had this, and that only really fed them. So it was them, like the 2 parents, and then I think they had 2 adult children who may or may not have had partners, but they ate fully 4 days a week off their property, but 3 days a week. still had to go and supplement the food. So that probably brings me into, well, it does bring me into local communities, because it's almost there. And even like with organic, I think you have to be organic if everyone else around you is organic. So I'm not quite sure how organic works, but it's like this, growing food has to be a community affair, where maybe you grow the avocados, I grow the oranges or something like that. And then it's a sustainable thing, so you can then rotate your crops about who does what and that sort of thing.
And I think that's a really terrific point as well, that I guess I think it would be very difficult to be purely self-sustaining in terms of a lifestyle. I think there seems to be much more potential for it if you do live in a community where everyone is doing different activities that complement each other, so that the one person isn't trying to do everything themselves. Or if you like growing tomatoes, knock yourself out, grow the tomatoes. But for the community, I like growing beans, so I'm going to grow the beans, and sort of I think that's much, humans are sort of apparently meant to live in communities, and it's sort of, there's a lot of other benefits we haven't even touched on in terms of the connection with other people, and also the connection with nature and your environment, and things that you need to sort of, I guess, consider, and things when you're growing your own food, or growing anything. You need to think about the weather, and you need to sort of look for signs that something's not quite right. Maybe it's your leaves are starting to curl up on your something, or you sort of have to be a little bit tuned into those things. And I think there's therefore a lot of benefit on a more spiritual and a sort of emotional levels as well, in terms of the calming nature generally of being outdoors, and being amongst living creatures, and for a lot of people, they feel a lot of satisfaction tending to their own garden, and it's exercise for a lot of people. It's sort of physical activity. There's just a lot of different things. And I guess we've touched on that composting thing. Hopefully you can reduce the waste from your that goes to, say, a municipal system or something, by composting, and minimizing packaging and all these other things that come with when you grow your own food, or you can buy it from local community markets. Hopefully you don't have all the packaging and plastics and and cardboard and things that comes when you can buy something from Woolworths and it's already pre-packed, or it's it comes in boxes that they might unpack to put the individual packs on the shelf, but there's still all this waste we don't even probably really see in that process.
And which is impacting the environment. Actually, something else you were touching on just before, with the community gardening as well, is one of the things I've also noticed for myself, and it's just something that twigged in later life, is that Mum spent all of her time growing all of these, basically, and swearing at God, even though she says she's not religious, and all this sort of stuff about not enough water, the bad soil, and all this sort of stuff. And the reality is we're in Australia, but for the most part, our gardens consist of foods that are grown in Europe. And and yes, they grow here, but we have to continually change the environment for them. So it's I guess where I was going to with that is that as a community, if we're growing foods that are and getting successful at it, then part of that might actually be a changing back to, we only have strawberries at once a year when they're in season at the cold time of the year. That's right. Instead of trying to get strawberries all year round, instead of trying to have food that's not native to your area, or changing. I know one of our other things was about what some quick things that you can change, but I went and watched an Aboriginal chef demonstrate. Here's the salt and the pepper and a couple of other things that are just available from the Australian bush, and instead of having pepper imported from South America, you can actually have Australian pepper. Just things like that. I think that it's our topic tonight was really about transport of food, distribution of food, and and I guess ultimately coming down to how your food is grown and its impact on the environment and nutrition. And there are a lot of things that we can do over time for ourselves. Is start training ourselves to not eat the European food all the time. Just substitute out something. That's not the topic that we're on tonight, but just really.
No, but it's absolutely relevant. Yeah, absolutely relevant, because I think in terms of distribution of food, you're absolutely right. A lot of it does come from international sources now, and apparently one of the worst things for the environment is imported asparagus from Mexico. Like things like this, where you try to transport a fresh food across long distances. It's got to be refrigerated. Probably is being sprayed with something or gassed with something to to maintain its freshness. Then it's got to get to the supermarket shelf. Blah blah blah. You take it home. There's a lot of embodied energy and resources that have gone into, I guess, getting that to your plate. And I suppose that is something that we're becoming probably more used to, is having more availability of things all year round, and not even kind of really questioning, do I want to be eating this food all year round? Do I think that is...
And it's great having tomato on toast every day, but the thing is if tomatoes are only in season, and apart from the fact I'm paying a fortune for tomatoes when they're out of season, it's like, how about I eat some other food and enjoy some other food when tomatoes aren't in season,
So, I think a really great way to approach, I guess, purchasing particularly fresh food is, I think we've spoken before about kind of going to local markets and things where, hopefully you can talk to the farmer. If you have questions about how food's produced, hopefully you can ask that. Do you add certain things as you're growing the food, or do you use certain farming techniques or whatever? I think to really start to connect with where our food comes from, and also hopefully if there's farmers selling produce in the local market, hopefully it is fresh, hopefully it has been picked relatively recently before it's sort of put up for sale. Hopefully it hasn't had to be transported a long distance. There's all these benefits. Hopefully you can take your own bag and you don't have to get excess packaging you're going to take home and throw away. There's a lot of things like that, and that to me fosters that sense of community and that sort of mutual support. Farmers need to be supported to use some of these perhaps techniques that are more beneficial for our health and for the environment. We haven't really spoken about that, but it is really improving the health of the soil that food's growing in is actually really great for the environment, for carbon capture. It's good for the soil, good for the microbes. There's a whole host of benefits that can come from that. So I think where it's available, that idea of purchasing locally and connecting with local farmers, and I guess perhaps understanding their drivers and whether what they find difficult, or what they love about what they do, or all these things that I guess I do believe that so when people talk about cooking and how you can infuse love into what you're making, if you have that intentionality about what you're doing. And I think I know there's some farmers doing some really great innovative stuff in terms of different natural things, even using different frequencies, say to keep bats off the lychee trees, or there's sort of a lot of different stuff I think around that's probably not common knowledge, because there'd be probably some people, more conventional farmers, that think it's rubbish in terms of some of the perhaps more energetic or vibrational.
Well, they use it to keep teenagers out of areas. Because they can hear higher pitches than adults can, so they just play the higher pitches and it keeps the teenagers away. Different
things that sort of perhaps a little left field for some people, but I think there's so many ways we can look at nature and look at, well, what works in nature. Even for example, a healthy plant growing in healthy soil won't attract, pests will normally fly over that and go for the diseased plant or the damaged plant, the weaker plant. So if you can have a nice healthy system that you're growing things in, hopefully you won't have as many issues with pests, or hopefully you attract the beneficial insects, or the frogs, or things like that naturally control. I can't promise there'll be no pests in the garden, but
I've got a lot of them. I'm trying to work out how to do it without spraying, because I have cats. I have two cats that like to also prowl around the garden, and the chickens as well. So
yeah,
I don't really like them to think that they're going to go and do that.
yeah.
Look, it's been great. I did want to. I did have a story that you reminded me of when you were saying something earlier, and I did want to share that with us. You know, you and the viewers. And so I'm conscious of the fact that we talked about growing food a lot. And one thing that my brother had a interesting experience a couple of years ago was that his friend was actually allergic to penicillin. And they went to a shop, let's go Chinese shop or something, a restaurant, sorry, and ordered fish, and it's like fresh fish. And it says it's a fresh fish from, you know, we fly it in fresh from wherever. It's supposed to be Chinese fish, but you know, you could even pick your fish out and eat it and cook it, and then blah blah. Anyway, the person the friend had a severe allergic reaction and went to hospital, and the only thing they could lay it down to was the fish. And what it turns out is to get fresh fish from China, they pop them into water, put a whole heap of penicillin or antibiotics into the water. That slows the fish down, so they go into almost like a stasis, and then they fly them out here, or even stick them in a boat, and then they wake them up by putting them back into fresh water. But now the fish has penicillin and antibiotics within their system, so you're buying what you think is a fresh fish that hasn't been sitting somewhere, and it's actually full of antibiotics. So it's you know, I did want to flag that, you know, we're talking about other things other than just, you know, vegetables and that, but it's also worth understanding that, if you're getting a fresh fish from China, they've done something to it to keep the fish alive.
That's right. Yeah,
to
that's
get
right.
here.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is worthwhile, you know, but particularly, you know, it's just all of these things you just need to consider, and that's how important and how, I guess, traumatic it can be is so look, that's just an interesting story that
really great insight.
Quite rounds out that distribution, and you know, to get people thinking about how their food's grown, how it's transported, and you know, making different choices, you know, eating from local farmers, eating local food. And how, you know, what is it you always tell me, Tala? Buy local, buy fresh.
It's good. So it's a good, you know, it's a good start. Definitely a good start.
So look, I've told my story. Is there anything in particular you want to give the viewers before we sign off for the evening?
Look, it's it's a big topic. We've obviously talked about some things. You've actually reminded me. It's like, well, there's a whole lot of other foods such as your meats and things and eggs and stuff that, you know, similarly, some are grown in more conventional methods that use a lot more, I guess, artificial inputs and have a lot more waste outputs. Others are grown more part of a natural system, like the grass-fed beef and things like that. But nutritionally more beneficial than feedlot raised, you know, sort of animals. But that's, you know, similarly sort of pasture raised eggs, or, you know, chickens that are, you know, released on the pasture, generally more, you know, beneficial than chickens that are sitting in the shed all day. But it's very, I mean, it can be hard to work out what actually happens. You have to be careful about some labeling is perhaps misleading, and you may feel like you are, you know, for example, free range eggs. Well, they have access to outdoor areas. It doesn't mean the chickens go out in the outdoor areas. It's sort of, you know, there's subtleties to be aware of.
They might be able to look through the little grating at the outside.
Well, there's a whole, you know, they may be permitted to exit. It doesn't mean they go out there, and in some cases they don't. Apparently, they don't necessarily want to, you know. I don't know.
They might be scared as well. They've never seen
it. So I think. Just being conscious about, or just starting to reflect more on our food choices, and perhaps asking some more questions of ourselves and about when we're purchasing. Do I really know where this is coming from? You know, are there a few more questions I can ask to find out, or, you know, do I, you know, my guilty sin is I love avocado, and, you know, think it's amazing. Sometimes you get avocado all year round now, but it's like, well, actually, it's not. You know, it's not actually growing all year round. So
No, you can get most of the year if you've got a few of the varieties, but you still miss a couple of months, yeah. And look, I think it's all coming down to as well is, yes, grow your own food. Look at what you can, what is more, you know, native to the area that you're in to grow your own food, and find out who's also growing food in your area and start, you know, maybe not garden sharing, but, you know, swap things or trading or something like that.
That's right.
There's
definitely ways to connect with other, whether it's other you know, gardening groups or permaculture groups, or there's actually some I think there's some websites where you can register if you have excess oranges or something. You can post that and people come and collect that from you and things.
Right, okay, interesting.
I think there's, I mean, I guess I'm hoping in the future there's even more of that, as you know, we sort of foster that sense of community and going, well, you know, rather than let something go to waste, I'll try to find someone who's, you know, who wants that item or who needs it, and vice versa as well. So, I mean, I think for some people, the idea of growing their own food is not, may not be practical for them at, you know, at the moment and things like that. So then really just trying to source that best quality you can.
Yeah.
You know, ideally from sort of local areas.
I must admit, I do, when I've had local excess chilies and things like that, because I'm not the world's best chili eater. I take them into work and pop them into things, and they're free for people.
Great.
And I'd like to see other people bring their produce in. It's just work is just an easy way to move it on, I guess, shift it on quickly. Otherwise, I've got to walk down and bang on each of my neighbours' doors and say, who wants some of this stuff, you know. So it's you know, so yeah, look, I think we can all start getting to know just our neighbours about who's growing what. Maybe we can trade and otherwise pay attention to what it is we're doing.
Just being aware.
Okay, well, look, we'll draw it to a close tonight, and it's great as always, Tala, and looking forward to our conversation next time.
Lovely. Thanks, Kathy. Good night.
Good night.